Only at Rare Coin Collecting will you discover the truth, the real history, the real demand, and the true value of rare treasures.
The 1939 Jefferson nickel is one of those coins that looks like an ordinary 5-cent piece at first glance, but the moment you understand the numbers behind it, the rarity becomes shocking. Imagine this: out of the San Francisco Mint in 1939 came just 6.6 million nickels. To put that into perspective, that's the lowest mintage of any Jefferson nickel struck for circulation up to that time, and it remained the lowest until well into the 1950s. And when you talk about a low-mintage coin in a series that runs into the billions, that scarcity translates directly into value. Now let's talk numbers. In circulated grades, this coin can fetch 20, 50, even 100 depending on condition, but the real shock comes when we step into uncirculated territory. A Mint State 65 example with full steps, those sharp, complete steps on Monticello that collectors obsess over, has sold for staggering figures. We're talking $10,000, $15,000, even past the $20,000 mark at auction. In fact, one of the finest graded examples, with pristine surfaces and strong strike, crossed the block at over $25,000. Think about that for a coin. Most people wouldn't glance at twice in pocket change. The history behind the 1939 makes it even more interesting. In the late 1930s, the Mint transitioned into producing the Jefferson nickel design, first issued in 1938. The following year, 3 different mints struck the coin: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. But while Philadelphia pumped out over 120 million and Denver struck nearly 4 million, San Francisco's production was tiny by comparison. And that's where the supply and demand dynamic kicks in. Collectors building complete Jefferson nickels had suddenly hit a wall. The 1939 became the roadblock, the key piece, the one you couldn't just pull out of circulation. And remember, this was the Depression era. Economy rolling into World War II. Coins circulated hard. Few were saved in pristine rolls, and most of the 1939 nickels were spent, worn down, and eventually destroyed. Today, examples with sharp detail are scarce. Full steps? Practically a miracle. To make it more dramatic, picture this. You're hunting through old change jars, maybe a collection passed down, maybe rolls from a bank. You see a 1939 date, you flip it, San Francisco mint mark. Instantly your heart should race, because you're looking at one of the most valuable regular issue Jefferson nickels of all time. But the story doesn't stop with rarity. Over the years, auction records for this coin have climbed higher and higher. In 2004, a top-graded piece brought in a record-breaking $23,000. Later, sales continued to shock the market. Prices this strong tell you one thing: demand is permanent. Collectors know this is a bottleneck coin, and competition pushes the numbers sky high. So what's the takeaway? The 1939 Jefferson nickel proves that you don't need gold or silver to hit staggering values. A simple 5-cent coin made of copper and nickel, from a year most people overlook, can sell for more than a brand new car. And maybe, just maybe, one is sitting in a box of nickels near you. That's the thrill of numismatics. You never know when history and rarity will combine into a fortune hiding in plain sight. When we talk about doubled dies in U.S. coinage, one that collectors love to hunt for is the 1940 Jefferson nickel DDO01, and the values might shock you. At auction, high-end Mint State examples of this variety have reached well over $5,000, with some gem full-step coins pushing even higher. Even mid-grade circulated pieces can fetch anywhere from $100 to $500, depending on condition and clarity of the doubling. So yes, if you spot this variety in a coin roll or old collection, you could be sitting on something far more valuable than face value. Now let's break it down. What exactly is the 1940 DDO01? DDO stands for double die obverse, meaning the die itself was hubbed twice in misalignment, leaving the design elements doubled. This isn't mechanical doubling or post-mint damage. This is in the die, so every coin struck from it shows the same doubling. On the 1940 nickel, the doubling is most prominent on the date 1940, the motto "In God We Trust" and parts of Liberty. Strong examples are easily visible with the naked eye, though a loupe will make the details pop. Collectors love this variety because it's bold and dramatic, not a minor doubling. The 1940 doubled die is listed in all the major references, including the Cherry Picker's Guide, which makes it highly sought after by variety collectors. The coin itself comes from the early years of the Jefferson nickel series. The Jefferson design debuted in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel. Felix Schlag's portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, with Monticello on the reverse, was the winning entry of a national design competition. By 1940, the series was still new, and most collectors weren't even thinking about varieties yet. That's why so many of these DDO coins went unnoticed for decades. People simply weren't looking closely. Let's talk numbers. The Philadelphia Mint struck 176,485,000 nickels in 1940. A huge mintage, but only a tiny fraction show this DDO 001 variety. And while the total number of survivors is unknown, certified populations tell the story. PCGS and NGC together have graded only a few hundred pieces, and the vast majority fall below mint state. Gems, especially with full steps, are the true rarities. That's why the jump in value is so steep. An XF coin might bring $150, but a nice MS65 can cross the $2,000 to $3,000 range, and MS66 full-step examples hit $5,000 and beyond. Auction history proves the demand. For example, in recent years, MS65 full steps coins have sold in the $3,500 to $4,500 range, while MS66 with strong eye appeal have climbed over $5,000. Even circulated examples continue to rise in value, as collectors who can't afford gems still want a representative piece. Diagnostics are key if you're looking for one in the wild. On this DDO, check the 1940. Date first. The doubling is boldest on the 1 and 9. Then look at In God We Trust along the rim, where the letters show separation. On Liberty, doubling is visible on the B and E. Strong specimens are unmistakable. But even moderate examples can still bring solid premiums. Why does this variety matter? Because it combines three things collectors chase. It's early in the Jefferson nickel series. It's a major double die, and it's relatively scarce compared to the huge base mintage. Add the fact that Jefferson nickels are widely collected, both by beginners and advanced specialists, and you've got a recipe for high demand. For modern collectors, finding a 1940 DDO Sabriawan is like hitting the jackpot in a nickel roll. Most circulated examples still trade in the hundreds, so even a modest discovery is worthwhile. And for registry set builders, gem full-step coins remain one of the toughest keys in the double die arena. So whether you're digging through an inherited collection, searching bankrolls, or just checking pocket change, the 1940 Jefferson nickel DDO 001 is one of those coins you absolutely want to keep an eye out for. With auction records in the thousands and demand growing every year, this double die has earned its spot as one of the most famous varieties in the Jefferson series, and one that proves a humble 5-cent piece can be worth far more than anyone ever expected. The 1938 D. Jefferson nickel is one of those coins that, on the surface, might look like just another early nickel. But in reality, it's one of the most fascinating issues in the entire series, because it represents a transition, a low mintage, and a collector favorite that still shocks people with the prices it can bring at auction. Let's start with the staggering part. In top condition, this coin has sold for jaw-dropping amounts. Understand 3D graded MS68 with full steps. Those are the sharply struck steps on Monticello. Brought over $33,000 at auction. That's right, a nickel, worth 5 cents when it was made, crossing into five-figure territory. Even examples in MS67 with full steps have consistently sold for over $8,000 to $12,000, and keep in mind, these are Depression-era nickels. To imagine that today a collector will pay the price of a car, or in some cases a down payment on a house, for one of these coins in the right grade, it's shocking, it's exciting, and it's the kind of story that keeps coin collectors hunting. Now let's step back. Why is this coin so important? First, 1938 was the very first year of the Jefferson nickel series. It replaced the Buffalo nickel after 25 years of production. And while Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco all struck Jefferson nickels in 1938, the Denver issue quickly distinguished itself. The mintage at Denver was only about 5.4 million coins, That may sound like a lot, but in comparison to later Jeffersons, it's a drop in the bucket. For reference, most later nickels were struck in the hundreds of millions, so the 1938 D instantly had scarcity built in. Collectors at the time actually knew this. In fact, some coin dealers in the late 1930s were encouraging people to save rolls of 1938 D nickels. That means that while many survive today, the key to the value lies in the condition. Lower grades are fairly common. You can find a circulated 1938 D for a couple of bucks. Even nice mint state examples, without full steps, can often be found for under $50. But when you start chasing perfection, that's when the market goes crazy. Let's break down the grading ladder for a moment. In MS65, which is gem uncirculated but not the absolute top, a 1938 D can sell for about $40 to $75 without full steps. Add the full steps designation, and suddenly that same coin can be worth $200 to $300. Jump to MS66 with full steps, and you're looking at $1,000 or more. By the time you reach MS67 full steps, you're well into the thousands. And the ultimate prize, MS68 full steps, is where the five-figure sales happen. The difference between an ordinary coin and a five-figure. Rarity here often comes down to strike quality. The full steps detail is notoriously hard to find, even on a coin that looks bright and shiny. Tiny abrasions, weak strikes, or just a little bit of wear, and the designation is lost. That's why advanced collectors are obsessed with it. It's not just about having a nice nickel. It's about having a technically perfect strike from 1938. Now let's add some history. The design of the Jefferson nickel, created by Felix Schlag, was chosen through a national competition. Schlag's design originally had a more artistic Monticello with angled perspective, but the mint required changes, leading to the flat-faced building we see on the coin. That design remained basically unchanged until 2004, so the 1938 D represents not just the beginning of the Jefferson nickel, but the beginning of one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. Another interesting fact, because 1938 was the first year, collectors at the time hoarded not just the 1938 D, but the 1938 S as well, which had a mintage of about 4.1 million. But over the decades, it was the Denver issue that gained the most attention, especially once grading services began certifying full steps. Prices skyrocketed in the late 20th century as registry set collecting, where collectors compete to build the highest graded sets, took off. That's where those 30,000 plus auction records really come from. Wealthy collectors chasing the finest known examples for their competitive sets. Think about that for a moment. A coin that cost 5 cents to make in 1938, now bringing more than 600,000 times its face value, all because of scarcity, condition, and collector demand. That's the magic of numismatics. And the story isn't finished. Today, with grading technology more advanced and collectors more connected through online auctions, the hunt for 1938 D, nickels in the highest grades, is more competitive than ever. Each time one comes to market, it sets off bidding wars. Because the population in those top grades is incredibly low, for example, at the MS68 full steps level, you can count the number of known coins on your fingers. That means every new auction result has the potential to rewrite the record books. So what does this mean for you as a collector? If you come across a 1938 D, don't dismiss it. Check the condition. Look closely at Monticello. Are the steps sharp and complete? Does the coin have luster, clean surfaces, and crisp detail? If so, you might be holding a nickel that could fund a vacation, a car, or even more. To wrap it all together, the 1938 D Jefferson nickel is more than just a coin. It's a symbol of transition, a key first-year issue, and a reminder of how condition and scarcity can transform ordinary change into extraordinary wealth. From circulated examples worth pocket change to pristine, full-step gems worth tens of thousands, this coin tells the story of American coin collecting itself. So the next time you look at a Jefferson nickel, don't just see 5 cents. See the possibility that a small piece of metal, struck in Denver in 1938, could be worth more than most people ever imagine. And remember, in coin collecting, sometimes the smallest details, like the steps on Monticello, make the biggest difference. The 1940 D Jefferson nickel may not seem rare at first glance, but don't be fooled. This is a coin with serious collector demand. striking challenges, and some incredible auction results. Let's begin with what matters most, the money. At the very top end, a misinformation with full steps in MS-68 condition is sold for over $20,000 at major auctions. Even in MS-67 full steps, you can see prices ranging from $2,000 to $6,000, depending on luster and strike quality. A step down to MS-66 with full steps still commands $400 to $800, and even MS-65 full steps regularly bring $150 to $300. Without full steps, the coin is more affordable but still collectible. MS-65 examples usually range from $50 to $100. Compare that to the face value of 5 cents, and you see why so many collectors chase this issue. Now let's talk about the background. By 1940, the Jefferson nickel design had only been in circulation for 2 years, replacing the Buffalo nickel in 1938 to Felix Schlag's design featured Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his famous home, Monticello on the reverse. But collectors quickly realized that Monticello was a problem. The steps in front of the building almost never struck up fully. Weak dies, poor pressure, and even slight wear left them mushy and incomplete. That's why the full steps designation is so rare and so valuable. It means the coin was struck with unusual precision. The Denver Mint produced about 43.5 million nickels in 1940, a large number compared to earlier years, but still far lower than the massive mintages that would come later. And because of wartime metal shortages in the early 1940s, the Mint was already preparing for big changes. Just a few years later, from 1942 to 1945, nickels would be struck in war metal alloy with silver, manganese, and copper. That makes the pre-war issues like the 1940D especially appealing to collectors. They marked the last period of traditional 75% copper and 25% nickel composition before the wartime experiment. But here's where the story gets interesting. While many 1940D nickels survive, most are not well struck. The Denver Mint had a reputation during this period for weaker strikes compared to Philadelphia. Monticello's steps were often flat. Jefferson's cheek was prone to marks, and luster was inconsistent. So when you find a coin with blazing luster, clean surfaces, and those elusive sharp steps, you found something rare, and collectors will pay up for it. Let's walk through the market tiers. In circulated grades, a misinformation nickel might only be worth 25 to 75 cents. In AU or low mint state without full steps, maybe a few dollars. But the story changes in high mint state. MS-64 coins are affordable, usually $50 to $30. MS-65 without full steps is $50 to $100 with full steps. MS-65 jumps to $150, $300. MS-66 full steps pushes into the hundreds, often $500 or more. And MS-67 full steps? That's where things get serious, climbing into the thousands. The very finest known MS-68 full steps are true trophy coins, explaining those 20,000 plus auction records. This leads us to an important point: registry set collecting. Collectors who compete to build the best Jefferson nickel sets need every date and mint mark in the highest possible grade. The 1940D is not the rarest Jefferson, but in superb full-step condition it becomes a key challenge. The small population of high-grade examples creates intense bidding wars whenever one appears at auction. Now let's think about the historical context. In 1940, the world was on the brink of war. Europe was already engulfed, and the United States was just a year away from entering World War II. American coinage of this era reflects stability. Copper-nickel alloys continued. Designs stayed the same, and millions of nickels were minted for everyday commerce. Yet even in this routine production, rarity emerged in the form of quality. The 1940D also carries sentimental weight for Jefferson nickel collectors. It's one of the earliest Denver issues in the series. Produced while the design was still relatively new, collectors who build short sets from 1938 to 1940 always consider this coin essential. And because the Denver Mint's quality control was inconsistent, the 1940D is an especially rewarding find in high grade. Picture this: a collector searching through old rolls of nickels discovers a bright 1940D. At first, it might seem like just another old coin worth a few cents, but under magnification, the Monticello steps are sharp and complete. Sent off to grading, it comes back as MS-67 full steps. Suddenly, that coin could sell for the price of a used car. That's the thrill of this hobby, transforming pocket change into treasure through knowledge, patience, and a little luck. In today's market, demand for early Jefferson nickels is strong. Collectors are rediscovering the series, and registry competition has made coins like the 1940D hotter than ever. The combination of first-decade status, condition rarity, and wartime proximity makes this issue one of the most interesting in the series. To sum it all up, the 1940D Jefferson nickel is more than just a 5-cent coin. In top condition, it's a rarity commanding thousands at auction. It's a piece of pre-war American history, a challenge for collectors, and a shining example of how small design, details like fully struck steps, can turn an ordinary coin into an extraordinary prize. The 1938 S. Jefferson nickel is one of the most fascinating issues in American coinage, and not just because it belongs to the very first year of the Jefferson nickel series. It's a coin that looks simple, almost ordinary at first glance, but for collectors, it represents rarity, opportunity, and in some cases, serious money. Let's start with what excites collectors most, the prices. In the absolute top grades with full steps, a misinformation, Jefferson nickel has sold for over $20,000 at auction. Even coins in slightly lower but still gem condition, like MS-67 full steps, often trade in the $3,000 to $7,000 range, and in MS-66 full steps, you're still looking at $500 to around $200. Compare that to the face value of 5 cents, and you begin to see why this coin has become legendary among Jefferson nickel collectors. Now, why is this coin so special? First, it's a first-year issue. The Jefferson nickel series replaced the beloved Buffalo nickel in 1938. Collectors were already paying attention that year because everyone wanted to own the very first of a brand new design. The artist behind the coin, Felix Schlag, submitted his winning design through a national competition. His original artwork was even more artistic, but the mint required changes to Monticello, Jefferson's home, giving us the flat, head-on view that would remain on the nickel for decades. The San Francisco Mint struck just 4.1 million nickels in 1938. For perspective, that is one of the lowest mintages of the entire Jefferson nickel series. Later dates would see mintages in the hundreds of millions, but the 1938 S was produced in quantities small enough that even in the 1930s, collectors noticed. Many dealers at the time urged buyers to set aside rolls and bags of the new San Francisco nickels. That's one reason why the 1938 S exists today in relatively nice condition. But the real prize is finding them with strong luster, clean surfaces, and especially those elusive full steps. Let's break this down by grade. In circulated condition, a 1938 S Jefferson nickel might only be worth $1 or $2. Even an average mint-state coin without full steps may only bring $30 to $60. But the second you cross into gem territory with sharp steps, values skyrocket. An MS-65 without full steps can fetch around $100 with full steps. That jumps closer to $400. MS-66 with full steps, now you're into the $800 to $2,500 range. At MS-67 full steps, you're competing against advanced collectors, and that's when auction results start climbing into the multiple thousands. And the very finest known, MS-67 Plus or MS-68, full steps are the ones that have stunned bidders by reaching over $20,000. So what does this mean for you? If you happen to come across a 1938 S, don't overlook it. Check Monticello's steps. Examine the luster. Look for those clean mark-free fields. Even if your coin doesn't reach the elite levels, a gem example can still bring hundreds. And if you somehow hold one of the finest known, you're talking life-changing value for what started as a 5-cent coin. To wrap it all up, the 1938 S Jefferson nickel is a coin of history, beauty, and incredible potential. It represents the launch of one of America's longest-running coin series. It's scarce enough to matter, common enough that collectors can chase it, and rare enough in top condition to spark legendary auction results. From a face value of 5 cents to 5-figure sales, it proves once again that in numismatics, the smallest details like sharp steps on Monticello make the biggest difference. The 1939 D. Jefferson nickel is one of those coins that at first glance seems common, but once you dive deeper, you realize just how rare it truly is in high grade. Let's begin with the numbers collectors care about most, the top auction prices. At the very top, a 1939 D with full steps Graded MS-68 has reached prices over $26,000 at major auctions. Even a grade lower, MS-67, with full steps, can bring between $3,000 and $6,000. An MS-66 full steps example sells for $600 to $1,200, and even MS-65 full steps pieces regularly bring $300 to $500. Without full steps, the coin is more affordable but still valuable. MS-65 is often in the $75 to $125 range, and MS-64 sits around $40 to $70. Even circulated examples have a small premium, with nice XF or AU coins selling for a couple of dollars instead of just face value. So why the big money? It all comes down to rarity and strike quality. The Denver Mint in 1939 struck about 3.5 million nickels of very small mintage, compared to most Jefferson nickels. That makes it the lowest mintage nickel of the entire decade. Combine that with Denver's reputation for weaker strikes during this period, and you have a coin that is genuinely scarce, especially with a sharp Monticello showing full steps. This coin is important for another reason. It came out in the very second year of the Jefferson nickel series. Introduced in 1938, Felix Schlag's design replaced the long-running Buffalo nickel. Collectors were excited about the new look, but quickly noticed a problem. Monticello's steps almost never struck up fully. That weakness plagued the series for decades, and the 1939D is one of the worst offenders. Coins with clear, uninterrupted steps are almost freakishly rare, and that's why the FS designation is so highly prized. Now let's look at the history around this coin. In 1939, the world was edging into war. Germany invaded Poland in September, and World War II had begun. The United States wasn't yet directly involved, but American coinage of the time reflects a country standing at the edge of global conflict. Just a few years later, the composition of the nickel would change to include silver for the war effort. That makes pre-war nickels like the 1939D even more interesting. They represent the last years of traditional 75% copper, 25% nickel coinage before the wartime adjustments. From a collecting standpoint, the 1939D has always been considered a key issue in the Jefferson nickel series. Its low mintage alone makes it a standout. Compare its 3.5 million mintage to the tens or even hundreds of millions that came later, and you see why collectors chase it. Add in the full steps rarity, and you get a coin that is both historically significant and financially rewarding. Let's talk about the market tiers in a little more detail. In circulated grades, a 1939D might sell for just $5, but once you move into mint state, prices climb quickly. MS-63 examples are usually $25 to $40. MS-64 jumps to $50-70. MS-65 is where it gets interesting, about $75 to $125. But if those steps are full, suddenly MS-65 might be $300 to $500. MS-66 without full step sells for $150 to $150, but with full steps, it's $600 for $300. MS-67 full steps is where the true rarity lies, often selling between $3,000 and $6,000, and the few MS-68 full steps known have crossed the $20,000 line. Those are the record breakers that make headlines. Collectors who build registry sets know this coin very well. If you want to have the finest Jefferson nickel set, you absolutely need a top-grade 1939D, and that competition drives prices higher. Every time one comes up at auction, bidding is fierce. That's why these coins often go well beyond their price guide estimates. But here's another layer: die varieties. The year 1939 has both the reverse of 1938 and reverse of 1940. The 1939D only comes with the reverse of 1940, which has sharper and more defined steps on Monticello. That means collectors looking for type variety don't need the Denver issue, but it still holds importance as the lowest mintage coin of the year. Imagine this: a collector searching through an old bag of nickels from the 1940s finds a 1939D. It looks average at first, maybe worth a couple of dollars, but under magnification, the steps are sharp, the luster is strong, and the surfaces are clean. After professional grading, it comes back as MS-66 full steps. That single coin could suddenly sell for $1,000 or more. That's the magic of numismatics. The hidden treasure waiting in plain sight.
Today, the 1939 D.
Jefferson nickel remains one of the essential keys to the series. It's not quite as rare as the 1950 D in lower grades, but in high-grade full steps, it's far scarcer and more valuable. Serious collectors know they can't complete their Jefferson set without it. To sum it all up, the 1939 D Jefferson nickel is a low-mintage rarity, a second-year issue, and one of the toughest full-step coins in the entire series. From a couple of dollars in circulated grades to over $20,000 at the very top, it's a coin that proves how much rarity and strike quality matter in numismatics. Whether you're a casual collector or a registry competitor, the 1939 D stands as a true prize of the Jefferson nickel series. The 1939 S Jefferson nickel is one of those coins that collectors underestimate until they try to find one in high grade with full steps. Let's start with the numbers that make people pay attention. The highest auction records. In top condition with full steps, a 1939 S graded MS67 has sold for more than $20,000, even a step lower. An MS66 with full steps brings anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000, while MS65 full steps coins regularly sell in the $400 to $800 range. Without the full steps designation, the prices are far more modest. An MS65 might bring $50 to $100, MS64 about $30 to $60, and MS63 often under 25s in circulated grades. These coins are still affordable, usually worth just $1 to $5. But when you cross into gem mint state with full steps, that's when the big money starts flowing. So why the gap? The reason is all about strike quality. San Francisco in the late 1930s had a reputation for producing coins that looked nice on the surface, but were not always fully struck. Monticello's steps are notoriously weak on the 1939 S, which makes fully detailed examples extremely rare. That's why you'll see a big jump in price once a coin earns that coveted FS designation from grading services. Now, let's put this coin in context. In 1939, 3 Jefferson nickels were struck: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The San Francisco Mint produced about 6.6 million nickels that year, which is more than double the Denver output, but still low compared to later mintages that would soar into the tens of millions. Even so, 6.6 million is considered a low mintage for the Jefferson series, making the 1939 S a semi-key date. Collectors recognize this early on, which is why it has always carried a premium over the common Philadelphia issues. The coin also has a little twist of variety interest. Just like the 1939 D, the San Francisco issue uses the reverse of 1940, with sharper details on Monticello compared to the reverse of 1938, seen on some Philadelphia strikes. That means while variety hunters chase the 2 reverses in Philadelphia coins, the 1939 S is more straightforward, but still important as part of the overall set. Let's walk through how this coin moves through the grades in the marketplace. In circulated condition, VF or XF coins might only bring $1 or $2, maybe $5 if they have particularly nice detail. AU examples usually trade in the $10 to $20 range. The real action begins with mint state. An MS63 might sell for $20 to $30. MS64 jumps closer to $30 to $60. Once you reach MS65, it's about $50 to $100. But here's where it gets exciting. Add full steps. An MS65 with full steps can suddenly be worth $400 to $800. MS66 FS pushes to $1,500 to $3,000. And an MS67 full steps, almost the pinnacle for this coin, has broken the $20,000 barrier at auction. That's the kind of price that grabs headlines and puts this coin on every serious Jefferson collector's radar. Beyond the numbers, the 1939 S has an important place in numismatic history. It came in the second year of the Jefferson nickel series, designed by Felix Schlag. The U.S. Mint had just moved on from the Buffalo nickel in 1938, and the new design was still fresh to the public. Collectors at the time didn't yet realize that certain dates would become keys. Only later, when survival rates and strike quality were studied, Did the 1939s gain recognition as one of the tougher, early nickels? It's also worth remembering what was happening in the world. In 1939, World War II broke out in Europe. The United States wasn't directly involved yet, but the global climate was tense. A few years later, America would enter the war, and the composition of the Jefferson nickel would change to include silver, due to wartime metal shortages. That makes these pre-war nickels like the 1939s especially significant. They are part of the last years before the dramatic changes in both the world and in American coinage. One of the great appeals of this coin is its role in registry sets. Collectors who want to rank highly in the PCGS or NGC registry competitions need a 1939s in the best possible grade. Because full steps examples are so rare, competition drives prices through the roof. A coin that might have sat in a dealer's case for $100 in the 1970s could now be a five-figure showpiece in the right condition. There's also a bit of collector psychology at play. Many new Jefferson nickel collectors begin by chasing the famous key, dates like the 1939D or the 1950D. But as they get deeper, they realize that the 1939S is equally challenging, if not harder, to locate in gem full steps. That realization pushes demand steadily higher, and it's why this coin has stayed strong on the market over the decades. Imagine a collector flipping through a bag of old nickels. They pull out a 1939S. At first glance, it looks like just another pre-war nickel worth a few dollars, but under the loupe, the steps are sharp, uninterrupted, and the surfaces gleam with original mint luster. They send it to grading and it comes back as an MS-66 full steps. That coin is no longer just pocket change. It's suddenly a $2,000 trophy piece, maybe more if two registry collectors fight for it at auction. The story of the 1939S Jefferson nickel is ultimately about how rarity reveals itself, not just in mintage numbers, but in strike quality and survival. With only 6.6 million struck, it's already one of the lowest mintages in the series. Combine that with the difficulty of finding sharp strikes, and you get a coin that stands tall among the early Jeffersons. So whether you're collecting casually or aiming for the top, the 1939S is a must-have. In lower grades, it's an affordable piece of history from the early years of the series. In high grades with full steps, it's a coin that can rival the best of them in value and prestige, from a couple of dollars. In circulated condition to over 20,000 in the finest form, the 1939S Jefferson nickel proves that even a simple 5-cent piece can carry an incredible story, blending rarity, history, and collector passion into one small piece of metal.